Hey, to kick things off, the Confederates are going to be entering with a big stack of units in from here. Now, this is a weird game. If I remember correctly, it's really hard to come to grips with the enemy, to actually fight him. The stream odds aren't going to be included here, but we have the rough hexes, which are doubled. A lot of good terrain for the Union. So to a large extent, these strong Union units are going to be really tough to fight. I could get 2 units against this one. This is 10 strength points. It'll go up to 20. I'm not going to do much more than inflict a retreat on it. So what you kind of try to do is undermine the position with more maneuver than with straight up fighting, if I recall correctly from this. The terrain is just very, very strong. So I'm going to start moving these guys on and try to figure out what I can do. Now remember, if I cut down under here, below the Chickahominy, I trigger all kinds of things that maybe I don't want triggered. Plus I cause some victory points. Okay, so here's the initial Confederate remains here. And the Union's going to be getting a reinforcement down off this road here. Going below the Chickahominy is really dangerous. These reinforcements come in from back here. They're going to basically be able to cut off anything that goes down there. But I do want to put some pressure on this streamline and send some other forces around to try to curve around. Given that situation, the Union's looking to try to defend a line from the Chickahominy as far up as it can and give up that ground as expensively as it can, basically, in terms of time, if nothing else. Looking at the Union situation in this game, I flung some troops up near Gaines Mill, New Cold Harbor, and I'm beginning to realize, wow, if that's what the Union wants to do, this has to be the early parts of the 7 days. And indeed it is. I looked that up briefly. This is the 26th through 28th. The Gaines Mill scenarios over in the Gamers game over there are 26th and 27th. It's going to cover Gaines Mill going down into Seven Pines, part of the battle. But not covering the whole 7 days. Richmond is over here, I guess, and the Ball's Bluff and everything way down here, probably. I don't know. Anyway, all I know is what seems to be the obvious thing to do seems to align well with what the historical situation was. I think another option, of course, is to defend back here, where it's a little safer, but I think flinging up and gaining some more territory makes some sense. The problem with a game like this is, well, you can look at the reinforcements and see where they're going to come in, but it a little bit surprised me to see the Confederates come flooding in here because I didn't take that task. So this one cav is going to be attacked, and then we've got an attack here. I didn't want to launch one here. This is too strong a position at 32 strength points. I couldn't get a lot on there. I'm trying to do this, you know, without hitting at bad odds. I probably could have gotten... I don't think I could have gotten 1-to-1, actually. I think I could have gotten maybe against this. See, now this is doubled because of the river, and then no effect from the forest. So I might have been able to get a 1-to-1 on this. But a 1-to-1 is not a pleasant attack. If it gives you the attack or retreat, it means your units aren't going to fight for the rest of the day until after you get to here. So that's a bad thing. You don't want to really commit them. So I want to try to break through and put threats in on the rear side here and force the Union to fall back and force a defense, maybe along this woods line or something. Woods aren't good though, so why bother? Hell, let's do these attacks. At least give an example of something. I haven't given an example of the movement for whatever reason. But let's see, 8 and 11 gives me 19, and 15 puts me to 34. I've got this artillery, which brings to 35 because I can shoot through this hex, it's empty. I shoot along the hex line, I'm allowed to pick either hex. So I gotta count again because I spoke. 8, 19, 34, 35 to 6. Now, woods have no effect here. 35 to 6 sounds like 5 to 1. That's a pretty good chart. I'm gonna find me a die. Unfortunately, I'm always putting them away. Good old Avalon Hill dice for this. I don't want to use my SPI dice. They're a little too small for my taste. Alright, 5 to 1 is not good for the defender. I get a 5 roll, that's an exchange. That means 6 strength points for the defender are lost, 6 for the attacker, and I'm allowed to make an advance. I'll push forward a couple of units, like, yeah, let's push those big units in. I kind of don't like leaving this gap here, but the Union's not going to exploit that. So I'll get my big units up front. Now I've got a bit of a danger with the zone of control here, but you don't really want to be defending a woods area, so we may well see some fallback there. Now over here it's even worse, 20 lots. So we're going to be on the 6 to 1 chart here, and a 6 is again going to be an exchange. And that sucks. There goes a 2 strength point Union Cav. And I didn't put anything small up there, so I lose a whole 6 strength points. And again, an attempt, the right to advance. Let's push these forward into there. Not good results, but, you know, this kind of game is very beer and pretzels. You don't really want to think too much about it. Unlike things like Africa Corps, which feel very beer and pretzels, but if you start figuring them out too much, you start realizing, wow, there's this weird geometric stuff you can do. I don't think there's so much with this. I think you can play this more by feel. All right, we're actually on turn 2 here. The Union's going to get some reinforcements somewhere, which are 0410. 0410. They're going to be coming in down there, so I get to keep pumping more and more troops in this. He starts to push their defense line out this way. There's a lot of overhang over there, though. That's Confederates are going to be able to make up some room cutting around and force me to fall back. Meanwhile, got these units moving up. I don't know how safe that is, because I got to defend in this area. Now, there are no Confederate troops coming in there, but there are some down here at 0728. When the hell did those come in? That looks like it's way back around turn 18. That's sort of the final victory, the final push units. So I don't have to worry too much about them. Alright, the rebels are continuing their push, trying to get an outflank here. And when I wanted to get my odds, what I ended up with was 20, 34, 36, 12. That gets me a 3 to 1 here. Unfortunately, this is going to be a 1 to 1 attack. That's not terribly good. Now, 3 to 1 over there. I get a 1. That's defender eliminated. I'm going to take these guys. Now I can advance. And we'll just... I think we're going to pump over here because we want to get more force in this direction, and the road will help us do that. But over here we've got 15 and 8 is 23, 24 to 15. That's just a 1 to 1. The woods aren't helping the Union, but they've got pretty decent sized forces there. Now if I get a 1 through 3, I'm okay. Unfortunately, I get a 4. That means I gotta retreat. And I got some kind of painful retreats here. These guys will push back up here. And these guys will push to here. This guy did not get affected by a retreat, so he's able to go without the effect. I've got to write some numbers on these so that I can remember what's happened. But those were ineffective until the end of the night, which means, you know, they're forces I can't really use on my attack anymore. I'm getting some nice leverage over on this side against the Union. They're probably going to have to fall back out of here. Problem? This guy can't leave. He's stuck in these zones. So now I'm committed into a fight, and maybe I can't withdraw as easily as I'd hoped. Or maybe I have to fight up there and lose some units. So in a sense, that retreat wasn't so bad because it helped set up a situation where this guy's got some nasty choices. In trying to pull back, they get their artillery parked back here. More units moving up, ready to cross and try to prevent whatever the Confederates are doing over there from happening. Strung some units around this way, new units coming in over here. These guys forming the cluster of my defense, but I'm forced to make a 1-2 attack here. I could have thrown more troops in, but I didn't see anything that worked for me. A 6, that's an attacker eliminated. Bang. Well, that's nice for the Confederates. A retreat would have been okay for the Union because, you know, they can still use the units kind of defensively. They just don't have a way to really get a grasp on the Confederate forces and make an attack here. So remember when I said this game was more about maneuver than attacking? This is a really tough nut to crack. Even though these guys are out in the open, I could only get maybe 1 or 2 units or 1 or 2 hexes attacking them. And because of the terrain going through here, it was just too tough to launch an overall attack. So now I've spread out, kind of surrounded them. They have to get out of that pocket, there's no question. Fall back to the next defensive line. Where's that? I'm not sure. It could stretch up to here, but I think it's more going to be centered around the river line. I really do have to worry here. These are the ineffective units. They can still go marching off and cover holes and even capture ground where the Union ain't. So we gotta kind of worry a lot about that. I don't want to step across the river. I could clearly do it here, but that would trigger a bunch of Union troops that I just don't feel ready to handle right now. Main fight's still going to be in here, so I've pulled the Union back as much as I can. Trying to form a defensive formation, but you know, honestly, when you're retreating in some of these games with this kind of terrain, it's tough, and that's a really ugly shape to be defending in go terms at least. A little bit of extension off here. These guys too far out to really prevent an attack through here, but the terrain kind of helps. I'm not sure if this guy's going to stay here or if I'm going to be able to slither more units down in that direction. Basically, I'm assuming I'm going to be able to cover a line there. Strong question of whether or not anything up here really matters too much, except in terms of providing a highway for the Confederates to move down. This route threatens the important stuff, and that may be the better overall route, but I wanted to try to capture the troops there, and I also want to chase them out of there. I don't want to leave a force behind me which could come in and do a lot of damage. So pocketing them would have been nicer, but they're not going to let that happen. Well, it's a night turn, which means I can't really engage. So I've closed a little bit more, made some more ground down there. And now the Union's going to come in. Where do they get their reinforcements? Probably the same place they've been getting them from over here. Turn 50414, yeah. And they can keep looking for a good defensive line to face. This is clearly not it. We are at the end of a day. And that seems like a good place to stop, actually, for the turn, or for the night. Confederate units that were rendered ineffective are back in play now. Got the ability to attack, but the Union line, unless I want to cross the river, is not, or creek, I'm sorry, is not a very pleasant thing. I've got these guys kind of exposed out front. I could get a lot of strength against them, but they're doubled in that rough terrain. Likewise, well, over here, things are a little bit weaker. Maybe an attack down in this area might work. Problem is, there is reserve back here, and there's some artillery strewn throughout the locations. Now, that artillery isn't really helpful on defense, which is a little strange. The game design goes into, yeah, we thought about that, but decided it wouldn't really work right or something like that to give artillery a defensive ranged fire. With some idea that a mobile defense would be best. Well, American Civil War mobile defense doesn't really make a terrible great deal of sense. However, artillery pounding advancing units does. It may be abstracted enough that it's not that terrible, but it does feel a little strange. On the other hand, whenever I play one of these highly abstracted games, and whether it's, I don't know, some of those old Avalon Hill classics up there, the Battle of the Bulge, Stalingrad, they all feel like the same scale to me, and this does too. It's just I'm moving pieces and I'm setting up these certain kinds of defensive lines, worrying about my 2 hex distance or 1 hex between distance, and they all follow the same rules. Rules that don't really maybe make as much sense in a grand tactical as they do on the operational level or whatever. So, it provides you with an interesting puzzle in a situation based on the on a real event, but it's barely a simulation. Anyway, let's end this one.